guys? This is Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 115. Here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, man?
Doing excellent, man. Happy to be back talking a lot of fights from this past weekend with you. Lots of action to break down.
We've got so much. Yeah, I'm doing well, but we've got so much to discuss. It's like overwhelming. So here's what's on tap really quick for today, guys. First, we've got my opening question for Fight Geek, and that's going to be news related. After that, we're going to jump into a recap and review of UFC 266, which I thought was card of the year, but we'll move on. I shouldn't say too much. Then, quick recap of Anthony Joshua taking on Alexander Usyk. After that, preview and picks for UFC Fight Night, Santos versus Walker. We're going to cover Bellator London's main event MVP versus Lima 2. And then my favorite section, listener questions and more. Okay, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
That's a lot. So, Fight Geek, let me start off the show with this question for you. So, over this weekend, Jon Jones, of course, was arrested again under seemingly pretty disturbing circumstances. The story is still developing. Of course, he's innocent until proven guilty, but some of the details definitely sound like, you know, his fiance was bleeding from the mouth, from the nose, and her one of Jon Jones's children had to call the police. It's horrible stuff. Simple question for you, Fight Geek. Should Jon Jones be cut? Yes or no, and why?
Yeah, man, it's a sad story all the way around, but, you know, the problem is with Jones is he's such a repeat offender that I do think he needs to be cut, because it's clear that whatever blockades or fail-safes he has in his life currently, they're not working. So, you know, to stay doing the same thing, I think I'm probably butcher this, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting there to be different results.
And expecting a different result, correct. That's
the
definition
of insanity. So I think Jon Jones is like case in point of that. You know, he is not truly going to change until, you know, he's, you know, really affected by, you know, his actions. So
okay, so
this is really disheartening to see, you know, sad to see, you know.
Let me play devil's advocate. Fight Geek, let me play devil's advocate really quick. There's an argument that says, sure, the UFC could release Jones, okay, but then realistically, Bellator is going to pick him up immediately, and he's just going to be enabled again.
I understand that, but at that point, I mean, I think I even saw you made a couple points this week on Twitter about, you know, the UFC's had some of its best years ever with Jon not participating. Jon has been sitting out,
like
making a move to heavyweight, and Jon is basically, you know, pseudo-retired in my opinion. You know, he's bidding with the UFC. He's making it hard to book these fights. He's being out. He's being vague. So the UFC has gone on thriving without him. So I don't think the argument of the UFC is losing this huge commodity is as accurate as it once was with Jon Jones, especially considering if he was going to go to heavyweight, he was risking, you know, potentially losing right away and tarnishing his legacy. So the UFC, I'm sure, don't want to lose the opportunity to promote a Jon Jones fight, but it's
what do you say to people that are fans of his or even not fans that say, Fight Geek, you may not look, if he's going to face consequences, it'll be in a court of law. He's still one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. You can't cut him. If anything, just have the law deal with him. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I understand that, but, you know, for the UFC, and, you know, Dana White runs kind of contrary to, you know, culture, but these kinds of stains on your resume are really hard to overcome in mainstream media and culture. I mean, let's say he is convicted of this. What does that look like? I mean, he's a convicted, you know,
he's facing criminal. Felony charges on the police vehicle he damaged.
You know what the speculation is out there, because we don't truly know. We have very few details about it, but from those details, I think that a lot of us can.
But so you think he should be cut? If you're Dana White right now, you're cutting Jon Jones?
I would say yes, but that's just me. Maybe that's me taking the moral high road. You know, Jon Jones is in in Vegas for the UFC Hall of Fame. He's gushing over his wife earlier in the night, saying that he couldn't be where he is without his wife and his children in the front row. You know, this is a family thing. This is a great night to celebrate. For it to end like that means that there is some serious, serious things that need to be dealt with. And I don't think promoting Jon is really a beneficial thing for the UFC if that's the case.
Yeah. So, look, I think people saw on Twitter, I posted my thoughts on this a little bit earlier, but, fairly muted, but I did say that I agree with you, Fight Geek, that I think Jones should be cut, that this is a line too far. But I want to say a few things really, really fast. I genuinely take zero pleasure in this latest misstep by Jon Jones. And I mean that. I really, really take no pleasure in it at all. It's a horrible situation. And if you're thinking from the perspective of a Jones fan, which I want to do here, and you're thinking, what is best for Jon? And I think that's what we all ultimately truly want, is what's best for Jon. Is it in his best interests long term to still be in the UFC right now? I'm not saying they can't re-sign him. I'm not saying never say never. He's not written off forever. No. But maybe he needs to get cut, and that's the wake-up call he needs, and then he can get his life together and maybe make a true comeback.
I mean, the reports of him joking about taking on all of the police officers physically kind of gives you a glimpse into how invincible Jon Jones thinks he is. Especially in today's climate where people are afraid of the cops. Jon Jones, who's a minority, is barking back at cops, threatening them physically. The guy absolutely has no boundaries.
He headbutted the police car and caused severe damage.
He's a dangerous person. I can't believe he's getting off with $8,000 bail, considering he was that physically unruly, and he's a monster. He's huge. So the fact that those police officers were able to have the restraint, and I don't know many details about this, but if Jon Jones was worked up enough to be joking about fighting multiple cops and smashing his head into the car and having bits of crying and laughing.
I have a bit of information. So apparently he threatened jokingly, in a joking manner, to fight them all. They threatened to tase him if he continued to resist. At that point, he apologized and cooperated.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't get the courtesy of being warned.
You are correct. Exactly. So, Jones is getting a lot
So what I'm
of
saying is, what that allows me to do
is
just kind of speculate on his mind state, and he thinks he's invincible. I think that's clear, right?
Yeah, and just and
the fact that he was threatening the police that he was going to sue them because they were arresting him on his night also speaks to Jon feeling that the whole city of Las Vegas was his that night, apparently.
Yeah. So final thought on this. I want to move on to UFC 266 because what an amazing card that was.
What an amazing card. But this was just very jarring on on many levels. Hard to get around it.
Yeah, last thoughts on this. Just I'm surprised, frankly, Fight Geek, if I'm being honest. I'm not surprised by a lot of what you say, but I didn't expect you to agree with me that Jones should be cut. I really didn't.
Well, I personally, I think all of us have different experiences with, maybe domestic violence or abuse or violence in general.
No, domestic violence is something that, that's a line.
So if you've had any level of interaction or experience with that, it's incredibly difficult to be interested in seeing Jon Jones fight until there's some real progress made in his life. Jon has had.
I think that's very fair, more than fair.
And I've been very apologetic for Jon, and I've seen Jon's.
You have on this show.
I've always kind of pulled for Jon and given him the benefit of the doubt, but what he says and what he does is so contradictory. It's just really hard to wrap your mind around. And then if a child was frightened enough of his father to ask a police officer to come intervene with.
Yeah, isn't that just
while they're
terrible?
On vacation, that's just a horrible scene. And those kind of details are just, it would be hard for me to be personally, and I'm only speaking from my experience and the way I feel, it'd be hard for me to get hyped up for a Jon Jones fight for a very long time.
Yeah, and just for the record, I completely agree. I echo that. I know that a lot of people joke that because I'm a DC fan, I don't like Jones, which is true, of course. But the truth is, I always thought Jones was a total badass. Obviously wanted to see all his fights. Duh, right? And I echo what Fight Geek says. It's hard.
I mean,
it's hard to get excited.
We got to remember they're humans here. Is Jon Jones still one of the greatest fighters to ever walk the earth? 100%. That's not.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're talking about Jon Jones, the human being, his family unit, his support system, his longevity as a, husband, father, man. All those things need to be determined before we continue negotiating an Ngannou fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. UFC 266 recap and review. Excuse me, Fight Geek. Am I correct in saying that UFC 266 is an immediate contender for card of the year?
Oh yeah, I think that goes without saying. That card was madness, top to bottom.
Yeah. And if someone's saying, okay, what would be competing with it, like UFC 261, Usman Masvidal 2, right? That was another great card.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know. They're all in the moment. They all feel big. I kind of.
But this one was really good.
Well, the action in this one was really very good, and there's so many layers of intrigue that came out of it. I think, in retrospect, this card's even better than it was going in. Because the storylines coming out of it are endless.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So let's dive into it. Where do you want to start?
All right. We are going to start towards the bottom of the card. We're going to try to move. We do have to move fast. I know that we can't cover every Fight Geek, but I want to touch on Matt Semmelsberger's one-punch touch defeat of Martin Sano. I believe that was one of Nick Diaz's training partners, Martin Sano, and he got slept by the very first punch that Matt Semmelsberger threw. It was he feinted a left, threw the cross right, and slept Sano on the feet. What did you think of that, Semmelsberger?
Well, I mean, obviously it was a beautiful knockout. I think the validity of Sano as a UFC fighter could be in question. I think he's probably only on this fight.
He was absolutely only here because of Nick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a super high level of competition, but it was certainly a beautiful knockout. So yeah, I mean, it was violence to kick off the card. So let's creep up. How about Nick Diaz's other training partner and more heralded one, Nick Maximov, grinding out a back-and-forth decision with Cody Brundage. What do you think of this?
It was Maximov is good. He's 7-0. He climbed to 7-0. He's undefeated as a middleweight, and he seems to be a very good grappler and wrestler, which is interesting for that weight class, right? For that middleweight weight class. I liked him. I think he's got a lot to improve on, but you know what he kind of reminds me of, Fight Geek, in a weird way? He reminds me of like Merab Dewashwili several years ago, like a worse version.
I can see that because he definitely has the grappling and the pace, and he's super tough. Everything else seems a little crude, but yeah, I think that's a good comparison.
But like I think he could be a big deal. He's definitely unpolished for now.
Yeah, 100%. Well, he's only 7-0 and he's super young, but yeah, definitely one to watch because, like you said, he does have the grappling and he's got the pace, so he's going to be able to drown a lot of guys.
Yeah, moving on to Jalen, I believe the Tarantula Turner, defeating Uros Medic, taking that the 7-0, making it 7-1 for Medic via submission via rear naked choke, 4 minutes and 1 second of round number 1. What did you make of Jalen Turner's performance?
Yeah, I was impressed. Jalen Turner's a rangy, athletic guy who wanted to strike when he was young, and now he's put together a couple performances where he's shown grappling and improvement. So I think he's kind of back in that hot prospect category, even though he does have the 5 losses, because you're seeing new wrinkles to finish fights in places he wasn't really comfortable early in his career. So,
by the way, he's on a 3-fight win streak, and he's won 4 of his last 5.
Yeah, so he's looking good. He's bounced back from a couple losses. Definitely think he's one to watch because if he's got a lot of range on the feet, and if he turns into a very solid, dangerous grappler, which is what it's looking like, could be a pretty well-rounded fighter.
Do you think that? So, do you have any thoughts on Jalen Turner's next opponent here? Does he deserve like a Diego Moises? Moises, excuse me.
At 155?
Yeah, am I totally
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to think out loud.
Am I tripping here?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was a lightweight fight. Yeah, that was a lightweight fight.
So that sounds good. Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this next one. Talia Santos defeated Roxanne Motifari via unanimous decision. I've got to say, for flyweight, I was really impressed with Talia Santos, who moves to 18-1 against the very crafty vet in Roxanne Motifari.
For sure. I mean, incredibly strong for the weight class.
Her striking was
her
strong
striking
and
was
fluid.
on point. So yeah, I mean, just like Jalen Turner to an extent, a lot of physical ability. Santos is 18-1. Obviously, she's very, very interesting fighter. I think she's probably a little underrated at this point because she's not that well known, but definitely a player at 125. And we're going to talk about Valentina here in a few minutes, but a lot of people think there's no one out there for Valentina, but this is an interesting name that's climbing the ranks at 18-1 with a lot of physical ability.
Absolutely. I completely agree with what you said. And real quick, hats off to Roxanne Motifari. She fights.
Always super game.
She's so game. She's not the most athletic, but she's got heart for days. She's improved so much. And I believe she made a record with most female fights, as long as you include tough.
Yeah, I think she's all-time record holder for female MMA fights, right?
So, either that or in the UFC. Wait,
I think no. Well,
I think it's fights.
She doesn't have 44 UFC.
No, you're absolutely right. It's fights.
Yes.
You're absolutely right.
So I mean, she's a pioneer. She's a legend for kind of her happy warrior persona, and now she's an actual legend. She's 44 wins in the women's MMA. That's impressive. Anybody that sticks around that long is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Tough as nails. Yeah, she goes in there even when she's outmanned and gives it her all, which is very, very easy to root for.
Dude, can I just say, we're only 5 fights in. I'm looking at the next 5 up on my little Tapology. Dude, this was card of the year in hindsight. I mean, I think it was.
So far, for sure. The next few fights are just madness.
So, next we have Chris Daukaus defeating Shamil Abdurakhimov via TKO, right cross to ground strikes. 1 minute and 23 seconds of round number 2. Woo boy! Chris Daukaus has come out of nowhere, dude.
Well, I mean, I think he's undefeated in the UFC. The guy's got super fast hands, really tough. I think he's sneaky athletic. I was kind of worried about this one because Abdurakhimov is a tank of a man. So, you don't really see him getting finished. So I was really impressed with how Daukaus got him out of there. Very impressed. Think Daukaus is clearly a top 15 heavyweight at this point. He's not ranked.
Right, yeah, no. So Daukaus is one of the very few people from the card who has been already booked for his next fight. He will be headlining, I believe, the final fight night of the year against Derek Lewis on December 18th.
I love that fight. Chris Daukaus will definitely be ranked at that point.
Isn't that a great fight? How fun is that fight?
It's an interesting fight because you can see where Daukaus could give the Black Beast problems, but you also could see where the Black Beast is capable of knocking out anybody who's not uber elite. So I think this is a very intriguing matchup. I love it.
Which new up-and-coming sort of new superstar heavyweight will go further? Chris Daukaus or Tom Aspinall?
Tom Aspinall.
Interesting choice. Okay, because by the way, I'm watching both of them, and these two are rising stars.
Well, they're both excellent, but at least Aspinall is a full-time fighter. Chris Daukaus is still a police officer. You're gonna have to factor in that he's not a 100% fighter. So I think eventually in the elite fighters,
is that changing?
In the top 3 or 4,
he just got a main event fight night. Maybe that's changing.
Well, maybe it is changing. So, that's yet to be seen. But I still like Aspinall's overall game in athleticism just a touch more.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on, Dan Hooker defeats Nasrat Haqparast via unanimous decision. Credit to both men overcoming extraordinary circumstances to not only make the fight, but make weight. Fight Geek, here's my very quick takeaway, and I want your thoughts on this. I thought this was Far and away the best I've ever seen Dan Hooker look by far. Am I crazy?
I don't know. I mean,
No. Let me just explain. He was initiating wrestling in a dominating way.
It was his most intelligent performance, without a doubt.
It was so clean. He looked like such a great
considering
new fighter.
Where he was in his career, it was the perfect fight. So I'm glad he didn't go in there and go blood and guts on his shield.
That's what I'm saying. He's usually a standing banger, but he didn't do that.
Yeah. So, but at 20-10 on the heels of a losing streak on the prelims, it was good to see that he didn't rest on his laurels and go out there and throw to the wind, that he had that. So, yes, I'm agreeing with you. It was very impressive of Dan and opens maybe a few more doors for him if he's able to fight with more variety. So that'll be interesting to watch.
I was going to say, am I wrong to say that, look, this Dan Hooker that's implementing the wrestling constantly, at least as a threat constantly, this guy can go further than the last.
He may, but you also got to think about the level of his opponent here, which I'm not taking a knock on.
Nasrat's a very fine fighter.
He's a good fighter. He's not a top 15 fighter. He was also exhausted from everything he had to go through.
True.
So I think that this may not have been his best night based on all of the circumstances. So let me see Dan Hooker do that to someone who's in the top 15, and then we can try to determine where his new ceiling is. Right now, for me, that was just a great bounce back, smart, intelligent, veteran performance that keeps him relevant.
Islam Makhachev needs a new opponent for UFC 267. RDA's out. Can Hooker get thrown in? What do you think? Or who's?
I don't think that would be. If I was Hooker's manager, I would not put him in that fight.
What about Beneil Dariush? That's what I recommend.
I think that's a more reasonable fight, Beneil Dariush. But why would Beneil, on a winning streak, who's looking great, take a fight on short notice when he's ranked ahead of Makhachev? That would make no sense.
Because Beneil has no leverage or true support.
What are you
no
talking
disrespect
about?
to him.
He's ranked number 3 in the world. You want him to fight backwards versus a guy on short notice? That makes no sense. He wouldn't do that unless they were paying him a lot. And that'd be a terrible matchup for Beneil Dariush to take on short notice.
I think Beneil could give Islam all kinds of trouble.
Not on short notice.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, moving on to, oh my gosh, dude.
Comeback of the year.
Merab Dvalishvili defeats Marlon Moraes via TKO via ground and pound, 4 minutes and 25 seconds of round number 2. But round number 1, in my opinion, was one of the greatest rounds of the year for sure. Tied with round 3 of that main event that's to come. But Dvalishvili he wasn't just knocked down, Fight Geek. He looked like he was partially unconscious and
no, he was getting beat all over the place. I mean, that was...
The ref could have stopped it and we would not have complained. And somehow
100%.
He found a way to live up to his nickname of the Machine and just come back. And I was so impressed, Fight Geek. I love this guy. I love this kid. This Merab kid is just...
It was as impressive as it gets when you're talking about the will and heart of a fighter. What was terrible is as soon as he withstood, I knew it was over. I knew Marlon Moraes had absolutely nothing left. Marlon Moraes is probably the best 3 to 4 minute fighter in the world. I'm serious. He is absolutely lethal dangerous. But I don't know if it's the muscle mass on his small body or what it is, but the guy's cardio is absolutely horrendous.
To be fair, I think a lot of people would feel disheartened in that moment, Fight Geek.
No, I understand, but a guy like Merab wouldn't feel disheartened. He'd get on his horse and turn the tide.
Merab has the most insane heart possibly of anyone I've ever seen in the UFC.
I understand, but we saw Brian Ortega in a worse spot in the 3rd round go for multiple submissions when his face is crushed and he couldn't breathe and get up off the mat.
We'll get to that. That's true. Yeah, you're right.
I'm saying we've seen a fighting spirit in some of these guys. Marlon Moraes is one of the most talented guys on the roster, but any level of adversity after the first wave, it's shocking. It really is.
Do you believe, so there's a heated debate right now, or not heated, but there's a debate going on MMA Twitter. I believe Moraes is due for contract renegotiations, or his contract is up or whatever. They're asking if he's getting, a lot of people think he's going to be cut because of this. Would you cut him?
Yes, I would.
Ooh, Fight Geek chose violence today.
He's lost via stoppage in 3 of his last 4 fights, and the Jose Aldo victory.
But they were against top people.
I understand, but even the Jose Aldo victory that he won a split decision, I firmly feel like he lost. So to me, he's on a 5-fight losing streak.
That's fair. I think that's fair, frankly.
I mean, if you don't get cut on 5 fights, I mean, that's about...
Cowboy.
Yeah, but Cowboy's in the UFC record books for most time on the mat, most freaking career wins. Cowboy, that'd be like cutting Dan Marino. Marlon Moraes isn't on that level, even though he was he an interim champion? Or
no. He fought for the belt against Henry Cejudo at 238, which I
he was the World Series of Champion fight. All right, champion. World Series of Fighting champion.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I mean... He's not a main event fighter anymore. He's not ranked in the top 15. You know, most of the guys he's beaten. I mean, he has to win over
you're talking about Marlon?
Sterling,
Marlon's ranked number 10 right now.
Say again?
You're talking about Marlon Moraes?
Yes.
He's ranked number 10 as of right now.
Oh, is he? Oh, I didn't realize that.
He dropped 4 spots. He dropped 4. Merab went up 5 spots. Merab's now ranked number 6.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. Losing 4 out of your last 5, with the 1 being controversial, all of them by stoppage, and clearly showing huge holes.
And he is expensive. You know, he's not a cheap fighter.
And he is expensive. He really feels like a PFL or Bellator fighter at this point.
Honestly, I have to agree. I do. I gotta agree.
Maybe even go over to 1. I could see him doing that, but I don't think he'd have much success at all.
Yeah, that wouldn't go well for. I think he should stick to Bellator or PFL. Probably Bellator. So Merab, let's talk really quickly about him. He's now number 6. He's already been asked he was asked directly after the fight if he would ever fight Aljo. He says absolutely not. They said, what happens if you get there and Aljo's the champ? He said, we'll figure something out. I'm absolutely not fighting Aljo. Unknown if that will ever be an issue or not. But Who do you think he should fight next? Here's who's in front of him. Jose Aldo, who is getting a fight with Rob Font scheduled. Sandhagen, who just got scheduled against Peter Yan for the interim bantamweight title at 267. And then number 2, TJ Dillashaw, who I believe is still out with surgery. So do you make Merab Dillashaw down the road?
No. TJ's not going to take that fight. Merab's going to have to fight backwards at this point.
Yeah, looks like he is, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's okay because he's new to the division. He's up 5 spots, so there's still lots of relevant guys. Like a Cody Garbrandt fight would be interesting. Pedro Munoz would be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if Cheeto Vera wins his next fight, doing Cheeto versus Merab would be super interesting.
Absolutely.
So he's going to have to fight backwards in the ranking because you have superstars above him. But yeah, there's still some very interesting fights. I don't think he'd want to fight Frankie Edgar. Aren't there ties to his camp there as well?
I think there could be.
So yeah, I think it's really I think Merab versus Garbrandt is very interesting.
Yeah.
I think Garbrandt would have an opportunity to hurt him on the feet, and Cody, his base was wrestling, wasn't it? So
yep. We have to keep it moving, but yeah. What's your final pick? Garbrandt? Is your final pick Garbrandt?
Yeah.
I think I agree with you there, to be honest. All right, cool. Okay. So Jessica Andrade defeated Cynthia Calvillo via KO via punches at 4 minutes and 54 seconds of round number 1. Impressive performance from Jessica. Cynthia is Cynthia. I feel a little bad for Cynthia. She's annoying to me, and I don't know why, because she has heart, but something about her annoys me.
She's tough, but she's an underachiever. I think that's easy to clear.
Yeah, exactly.
Jessica Andrade, I think that this was, this is what she does when she's at her best. She imposes her will. She marches you down. She lands heavy shots. If you don't back her off or, put her in her place, that's what she's going to do. She's going to come find you and finish you. So good performance by her. Keeps her relevant at the top of that division. She's a long ways away from getting another title shot, but she could definitely stomp everybody out from second down for a while,
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to Curtis Blades defeating Giardinio Rosenstrike via unanimous decision in kind of, a strategically smart but kind of ho-hum fight, right? Just Curtis Blades.
Well, this is exactly what I said last week. I expected Curtis Blades to be on top a lot, control a lot. And that's what he did, especially with his history of getting knocked out. When he has that kind of advantage, it's good to see him use it.
So let me ask you this, Fight Geek. So just on Curtis Blades real quick. Am I crazy in thinking he is this is going to sound so harsh, but I view him as the ultimate elite gatekeeper. I know that sounds so mean, but to me, he's just a little too one-dimensional. Everyone knows what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to take you down. He's going to strike with you. He's going to strike with you for a bit, but that's not what he's trying to do. And it's a little easy to read for some of the really elite guys. Even Giardinio had Curtis's eye completely swollen shut by the end. Yeah,
for sure. No, Curtis, and he's also in the past shown some issues with his cardio too, where he's incredibly winded. So yeah, I mean, it's a harsh term, but I could see that. I could see him being in the top 5 for a very long time. And
I just don't see how he becomes a champion. I really don't. I'm sorry.
But where does he go next? Because a lot of the guys above him are fights that are not attainable. So, Derek Lewis just knocked him out. He's not getting a Stipe Miocic fight. Cyril Gane is the interim champion. Francis Ngannou is not fighting him. So he just beat Rosenstrike. I mean, who does he fight? Does he fight all the way back to someone like Tom Aspinall? Or
Volkov just got a fight, didn't he?
I think he did.
Darn it. I can't remember.
So that's a tough spot for Curtis Blades because he might have to fight way back into the teens.
Yeah. I think that Blades might. He's like in that Merab spot, but way worse.
Yeah. Well, Merab hasn't failed at the elite, the ultimate elite level yet.
Right.
So he still has the promise of maybe, capturing a title. Where I think Blades, at least the current crop of guys, have kind of outlined the pecking order, and he's at the bottom of those guys.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on now to the first of the 3 5-round fights, and this was Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler, and I've got a simple question for you.
So much to break down in that one.
We'll get there, I promise, but I want to start with a yes/no question for you, Fight Geek. So afterwards, by the way, what happened was Robbie Lawler won via TKO retirement. That's the official on the official card at 44 seconds of round number 3. And my question is simple. Should Nick Diaz retire or keep fighting?
I mean, such a hard question. I mean, if he's going to be able to fight at 170, then I would be somewhat interested in seeing him fight again. I do not need to see Dad Bod Diaz at 38 years old, overweight, without the cardio to push the pace. I mean, the guy threw 300 strikes in less than 300 rounds, so the mentality and the technique was still there, but physically he was a shell of himself, and that is something that was just really hard for me to see.
So what did you think of his performance? Because before you answer, really quick, I'll say this. On Twitter, the reaction to Nick's performance was extremely polarized. There was like 50%,
it's mixed, without a doubt.
50% were like, oh my God, retire now. 50% were like, honestly, looked better than I thought, just needs a better camp, needs to get down to 170, looked great, let's go.
I mean, let's just say this. First of all, Nick's not a 185er. I think
but he requested it, not Robbie.
I understand, but I think it hurt him because he carried no power to 185. And not saying he's a power puncher, but like I said, I believe he threw 300 plus strikes in less than 3 rounds, which is an ungodly pace.
Yep.
So, at 170, I feel like, I don't know, the equation was just really off for this return. So for that reason, him being still pressing the narrative that, he didn't want to necessarily be there, that his management team booked the wrong fight with Robbie Lawler, the fact that he was overweight and a little bit out of shape, all really tell me that, no, I don't want to see him again, because those kinds of images and those kinds of performances tarnish such a special legacy. But then again, Did he show good technique on the feet? Was he boxing and flowing a little bit?
And let's talk about, what are we not talking about here? The fact that Robbie looked better than he has in years.
But he looked better than he did in years because he was fighting a guy coming off a 6.5-year layoff in a weight class above.
Oh, I think Robbie looked a little extra. You don't think he was extra fired up? You don't think he was extra fired up at all?
I think he looked good versus Nick Diaz. I don't think
he looked fired up. He looked like all right, let's fucking go, dude.
Nick was standing there flat-footed, backing up, taking his shots. That was tailor-made for Robbie Lawler to march forward and throw heavy shots. I mean, if you let Robbie Lawler do the singular thing he's good at, of course he's going to look great. But no other fighters are going to let him do that. I mean, we've seen that. He was on a 4-fight losing streak, and he was having a hard time getting off. And all of a sudden, he's marching Nick Diaz down and throwing at will. That's because Nick was just completely, the more I talk about it, the more,
But you did just say that Nick threw over 300 punches in well under 3 rounds.
Well, that's why it's so polarizing, because there's really a lot of layers of the fight.
So why was he getting marched down if he's throwing so much volume?
Well, because I don't truly believe he wanted to be in there, and it's been 6 years, and he was, heavier than he normally is, and he didn't have the gas tank clearly that he used to, because I do believe him retiring was a case of a busted nose and just understanding that he didn't have the depth to go the rest. I mean,
you mean retirement in the fight, just so that we're clear.
Yeah, retirement is,
of course,
is the official term for quitting or.
I just wanted all the listeners to know.
But to me, a 38-year-old coming off a 6.5-year, it wasn't a bad stoppage for him. I think it was a good call on his part. At this point, there's no reason to see the guy go unconscious. I think we all understand Nick is a fragile character, so you don't want to see, catastrophic. So I was okay with that.
Okay, you beat me to the punch.
If I'm babbling or not.
You beat me to the punch. Yeah, you beat me to it. You totally jumped on my question, you jerk. I'm kidding.
What?
Okay, so I wanted to ask.
The thing is, let me just answer the question. We can officially move on.
Okay, go ahead.
Do I want to see the best version of Nick come back at 170 and fight someone that makes sense? Yes. Do I want to see any semblance of a circus fight out of weight where it's changed last second and Nick is talking like that and blah, blah, blah? No. So I think overall, no, I don't need to see him fight again.
Okay. Very fair. You broke my concentration. You broke my frame of thought.
I feel like I'm babbling a lot.
I was trying to cut you off. So, okay. So here's my question for you. This is the elephant in the room on the fight. So I'm just going to say this. So Nick Diaz, at 44 seconds of round number 3, he'd been taking a lot of damage, and he essentially took a knee, or what he really did is fell down. Robbie fell down. Robbie, said stand up.
He was knocked down.
He was knocked down. Robbie said stand up, and he said essentially no mas to her.
He said I'm good.
I'm good. No, thank you. So here's the question: if this was any other fighter but Nick Diaz, he would have been burned alive. Let's just be honest. Burned alive at the stake for giving up.
I understand that, but
do you give Nick credit? Do you give him some leeway? And I think the answer might very well be yes, you do. Yes.
I certainly give him leeway because.
And I think I agree with that.
Name someone who's poured out that bucket more than Nick Diaz over his fighting career. I know a lot of the people.
No, I agree with you. I think he deserves the leeway.
I know a lot of people who are not familiar or watched Nick live in his prime don't quite understand what he gave in his fights, maybe. So
he deserves the leeway. I think he deserves it.
He deserves it because.
But I wanted to point it out because it shows his power. It demonstrates his power, which is cool.
One thing I did want to bring up before we moved off topic is, no matter how you feel about Nick Diaz at this point in 2021, there's one thing that's unequivocally clear, and that is that he is still an absolute superstar of the sport. He was the #1 trending athlete all weekend. He was the talk of the town. His return.
But will that be true? Will that be true next fight after such a controversial ending?
I would assume that is the saying past his prologue. Guys like Conor McGregor.
Nate Diaz ain't never taken no knee and said no mas. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
There's still so many questions surrounding his performance. Nobody even knows why he asked for 185 at the last second.
Right, that was really bizarre.
the shadiness behind the state he was in the fight gives me a little hesitation to come down too hard on him, because that wasn't a perfect situation. That wasn't Nick Diaz in his weight class on a normal fight camp. His fight weeks are always insane, but on Tuesday he was asking for a weight change. That tells me that something was very, very off. And then for Nick to call the fight off after a certain point tells me that there's a ton we don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I think we've covered it. It'll be interesting to see what happens next. But let's move on to that co-main event: Valentina Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy, which Valentina won at exactly the 4-minute mark of round number 4 via TKO ground and pound. And what are your initial thoughts? And then I'm actually going to incorporate a listener question that I think is highly relevant.
Awesome. My thoughts are, Lauren Murphy really didn't have much to offer. I think she landed 1 and 2 significant strikes, respectively, in a couple rounds. Valentina doing Valentina things. She's a technical monster. She fights exactly how she wants to fight.
The speed difference alone to me was it just looks like it's
technique. I mean,
it looks like she's honestly from a different, I don't want to sound corny. It just seems like they're in two different, completely different universes, stratospheres.
Yeah, is there another fighter who stays chambered the whole fight like Valentina Shevchenko? She's literally bouncing chambered for the counter strike for all 19 minutes of that fight. She was just there.
She never gets sloppy. She never makes sloppy errors.
Never gets sloppy. Never makes a wrong decision. Never makes a wrong turn. Is always driving the fight wherever she wants it to go. Lauren Murphy was tough, making it to the 4th round, completely nullified, and then the ending finishing sequence. I haven't counted, but it's 15 to 20 unanswered strikes where she's just walking her across the cage and putting her down. So
yeah, and then it also felt, I don't know if you picked this up, but I saw a few jokes on Twitter, and I agree that somewhere around the second round, after the second round, when Lauren Murphy was going back to her corner, it almost felt like her corner didn't even know what to say. Like they weren't expecting her to get that far.
I don't think it's that they weren't expecting.
They
her
almost
to get
seemed
that far.
speechless though on what
they
she could
didn't.
do.
It's not that they didn't think she'd get that far. They didn't realize Valentina was that good.
Right.
It's not that they didn't.
But they seemed at a loss of what to kind of.
These people have to tell themselves. Obviously, fighters tell themselves they're going to win, they can do it, and then they have these camps, and they have to have this positive reinforcement. And they have to believe. Sometimes you believe that for real, and then in the second round of a Valentina Shevchenko fight, you realize that no amount of dreaming helps that. There's no answer for Valentina Shevchenko in that moment. So.
Yep, absolutely. So now I'm going to ask a question from our good friend of the show, Mixta Man. That's at Mixta, MICKSTAMAN, man. So at Mixta Man, give him a follow, guys. He says, gentle persons. Don't think that's a term. What in the hell do you even do with women's 125? What's next for Val, and do you see anyone on the current roster giving her problems at 125? At this point, it seems like Val versus Nunes should just be done 100 times until some real contenders can develop. Fight Geek, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, like I said, I still think Talia Santos is an interesting fight.
She's 100% the most exciting.
I would not favor anyone.
But is she ready? Do you throw Talia Santos there already?
She's ranked. I think she's like 7th or something.
Do you give Talia Santos a title fight like now?
Well, I guess that depends. You're not going to give Andrade, Shakagian, Murphy, Maya, Calvillo, Calderwood. So it's either Vivian Araujo or Talia Santos for the next title shot in that division. So I know that's a hard sell, but I just don't think that they're going to make that Nunes fight next for some reason. I think it'll be someone more like a Talia Santos, personally.
Yeah, the truth is I want Nunes Shevchenko 3, but I actually don't feel like it has to happen right now. I think it will. I don't think either of them's about to lose. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm jinxing them. I don't think either's about to lose. They can get to it later.
Well, and then we also have Aspen Ladd, who's the number 3 ranked fighter fighting this weekend, correct? So
Yep.
if she has an impressive performance, Aspen Ladd may become the next challenge for Amanda Nunes and Talia Santos for Valentina Shevchenko, and I would think that both of those are fine contenders for each of those.
And
those
Aspen's
fighters.
fighting Macy Chiasson, right?
Yes, which is a very intriguing fight.
And if
Chiasson's
Macy,
ranked
I mean,
11.
look, if Macy wins that, who knows?
Well, if Macy wins, I don't think she's going to get a title shot from 11. But if Aspen Ladd comes back, has an impressive performance, I think number 3 could certainly jump Holly and Jermaine to get that title shot versus Nunes.
Quick shout out to @SheReaps on Twitter. Her name is Jamie. She's a very, very nice woman from Louisiana who is Macy's training partner.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Little known.
We ready to move on to the main event?
Yes, we are. Alexander Volkanovski defeats Brian Ortega via unanimous decision. Very curious. Number one, how did you score that fight? I scored that fight 3 rounds to 2, and I've gotten some pushback on that. I gave Ortega the 3rd round and even the 5th.
I mean, the night of the fight, I scored at 49-46, so I think I did give Ortega the 3rd where he had the 2 submission attempts. I know people have made a case that he won the 5th too. I mean, he might have. I scored at 49-46 though.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly fair. And honestly, guys, I had a few beers. Okay, I did.
Yeah, I had more than a few, but I wanted to give Brian a round just because of the heart he showed. I felt like he deserved to not be 50-45, but
I cannot. Let's talk about the 3rd round really quick. I think that was round of the year. Round of the year by far, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much. Ortega, how's he able to get those?
How did Volk get out of the triangle?
The moment where Volk is like looking into his eyes as he's being strangled in the triangle is like one of the most crazy moments in UFC history, in my opinion.
Absolutely, it was very Volk.
It was theater.
Volk made it clear that he would rather die than tap to Brian. You know,
he was going to sleep or nothing. I mean, when he was when he was like gyrating. I mean, that was crazy.
He was going out. He was fighting. He was fighting it. He was fighting going out.
Imagine Brian, how Brian feels knowing he was that close.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we're not really giving much technical breakdown. But yeah, what a piece of theater. I think Alexander Volkanovski has firmly planted himself in the top 3 pound for pound.
Absolutely. He looked amazing.
Arguably the greatest featherweight of all time.
Stop. That's ridiculous. Stop.
23-1.
Stop. No.
No, I'm saying it.
He's not.
He's got wins over Jose Aldo, 2 over Max, 1 over Brian Ortega, 1 over Chad Mendes.
It should be 1-1 with Holloway, and you know it.
Well, what it says on wax is what it says on wax. So.
But that don't mean it's facts.
Well, 23. Yeah, that's
and I
exactly
can rhyme
what
with
it
stats.
means. It's facts.
All right. Everyone's about to stop listening if we quit.
What I'm saying is
rapping.
You have to put Alexander Volkanovski in
He's
the top
3
4,
pound for pound, for sure.
Top 4 featherweights of all time. It's not even a debate.
Well, of course. Yeah, definitely. Top 3, right? He did great. So, here's my question about Brian, because if I'm being honest, I was a little underwhelmed. I mean, we both picked Ortega to win in a rare little screw up there. We got most of the fights right, though, but I picked Ortega to win, and I was underwhelmed with his striking in particular. He seemed unable to hurt Volk with his striking, and that did surprise me.
Well, Volk sees everything. He's unbelievable defensively, and Brian Ortega takes too many shots. I mean, it's not hard to see. The guy is the only guy in UFC history to lose 2 fights while absorbing 200 plus strikes.
Yeah. What did we think of Herb Dean, by the way? Herb Dean in between the rounds, how many numbers, blah blah. Ortega.
I honestly thought
Ortega's giving these horrible answers.
He couldn't even get to the corner. He was on his back, gasping for air.
Herb's like, he's fine. He's fine. He said purple. Let's go ahead.
Well, if you can't, I mean, for a second there, I didn't think he was going to be able to get to his corner. Didn't they have to pick him up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he could see much after the 3rd round.
Right. So, and then the 4th round was a brutal round for him.
I think they
So
should. I think they should have stopped it after the fourth.
I mean, there's no doubt, and it's a young sport still, so we don't see a lot of these long-term effects. But
But
think
then
you
Brian
can
showed
see.
hard in the fifth, so it's like weird.
Well, I mean, yeah, the body can do crazy things with adrenaline.
Right.
But Brian Ortega was immediately put in an ambulance and rushed to the hospital with a broken orbital, bruised ribs, and a hellacious beating. So
yeah, and
for a
just
30-year-old guy who's super elite, it's a little alarming that he's had two of these types of performances at the ultimate level.
Absolutely. If he doesn't make some changes, I think that he is going to run into, I think his career is going to be drastically cut short. And guys, in case I'm not being clear,
his chin's going to fall off a cliff.
Yeah, let me just make this point really fast. If I'm not saying it out loud, let me give Alexander Volkanovski all the credit in the world. I underestimated this guy. I often underestimate this guy. He proved me wrong, okay? He did. He's incredible. I just wanted to say that. This dude
he's got
is as tough as they come, man.
Yeah, and he's smart, and he's technical, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he's defensive, and yeah, he's got it all, actually. He's one of the most well-rounded guys you're going to find.
Heart for days.
Yeah, to be honest with you, this weekend's performance really elevates the way I think of him. Obviously, I was impressed by him with Max, but he showed everything you want to see out of a champion this weekend. Yeah,
absolutely agree. Okay, are we ready to finally move on from UFC 266?
I thought the episode's over. We got more?
Man, this is going to be one. We got to move. This is going to be one of our longest episodes.
Let's be quick. What else you got?
Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk. The boxing match happened right before UFC 266. Alexander Usyk with the shocking unanimous decision victory. I thought that the judges got it completely right. I thought the scoring was totally fair, which was really nice and a nice, refreshing change in boxing.
Yeah, exactly.
But, first and foremost, what's next for Anthony Joshua? Like, this dude's over, right? He's just a hype job. He's done now. And maybe that's harsh, but...
Well, I mean, again, I've never subscribed to the theory that 2 losses make you irrelevant. But
in boxing, it kind of does.
But it doesn't. I mean, is he the number one guy? I think we have enough evidence to say that, yeah, clearly Anthony Joshua is not the number one heavyweight in the world. He's been outboxed clearly twice in his career. He's incredibly marketable. He sells a bunch of tickets, so I can understand why they wanted him to be that guy. But the proof's in the pudding. He's not that guy. You think about a potential matchup with him and Tyson Fury. This kind of performance just goes to show you how badly Tyson Fury would outbox him as well.
Oh, Alexander Usyk had Joshua on the ropes and almost knocked out at the end of the 12th round.
Absolutely, and he didn't even have the luxury of the size and reach advantage, which. Tyson is enormous. Not only is he enormous, but he's hyper technical and understands all the facets of boxing. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, is Anthony Joshua that guy? I think we have enough proof to say no, but is he still a fun guy who I'd watch a trilogy with Andy? Sure. Would I watch him fight, Tyson Fury after Tyson Fury figures all this stuff out? Sure. Would I watch him fight Wilder? Sure. But is he in the pantheon of great heavyweights like, Hearn has been trying to sell us for the last few years?
He's not even close to like a Lennox Lewis, for example.
Not even close.
No way.
Yeah, not even in the same stratosphere.
Yeah, no way. Okay, so really quick though, if you're Anthony Joshua, he has a rematch, an automatic rematch clause.
Which I believe he's already invoked.
Okay, now you just ruined my question. I was going to ask, okay, so now that we know that Anthony invoked it, is he making the right call? Because a lot of people are saying, I don't know how he's going to beat Usyk.
No. Unless they go to the Middle East and he gets a favorable decision, I don't see how he's going to outbox that guy.
I mean, he was in London and he lost a unanimous decision. How's he going to go to the Middle East and get a better one?
I don't know, but I'm just saying that game plan ain't going to do it. So He's going to have to come in and reinvent himself a bit, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that for the rematch. So I think it's a tough ask for him and for him to lose twice to the same guy. But, hey, he's probably confident he can make the adjustments because he did it versus Ruiz.
Honestly, I've been actually watching Usyk from afar for a while. I saw him. I believe he had a fight against Tony Bellew, who
LU, yeah.
yeah, and he knocked him out. I'm pretty darn sure that happened,
Yes.
and I saw it.
Yes.
So I've known about Usyk for a while. He's got a very interesting kind of Joker villain personality. When I say Joker, I mean like from Batman Joker.
Yeah, like his demeanor is a little different.
Yeah, so I think he's actually very interesting, and I think that you could make Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder 3's winner versus Usyk very marketable very easily.
I believe so. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
So
I think all the heavyweights are still fun, and like I said, Anthony Joshua is still a fun fighter. I don't think he can be in that discussion as the top guy.
absolutely. Okay, so let's quickly move on to preview and picks for Santos versus Walker. We definitely can't cover the whole card. We're gonna just jump through stuff like super fast. Aspen Ladd versus Macy Chiasson in the main card. Aspen Ladd 9-1 versus Macy Chiasson 7-1. Who you got?
I'm taking Aspen Ladd via split decision.
And I am taking Aspen Ladd via split decision.
Awesome. Let's keep
All
it moving.
right. Misha Sirkanov versus Christophe Jocko, a middleweight bout.
This will be Misha Sirkanov's first UFC fight at 185,
Yep,
right?
he was a light heavyweight, absolutely.
So, yeah, a guy who had pretty good success early on. He's a big guy, so, I mean...
I've got Sirkanov via unanimous decision.
I do as well, but it is going to be interesting to see how he looks because he's a big 205er. Christophe Jocko, he starts off pretty strong, then kind of wanes and falls off. Exactly. I actually expect a stoppage here for Sirkanov.
Okay, interesting. Moving on to the battle of the baby daddies. Nico Price versus Alex Cowboy Oliveira. I believe they have something like 16 kids between the two of them, so they love, which is good.
I've got Nico Price via TKO.
Which round?
We'll go second.
Darn, I hate when I agree with you on the picks. It's not as fun for the audience. Guys, I'm sorry. We don't plan this ahead of time, so sometimes this happens. I also have Nico Price. Okay, moving on. Co-main event. This is a fun one. Kevin Big Mouth Holland versus Kyle Daukaus.
I'm going with Holland here. I think that obviously he's had the more high-end competition. This is not to disrespect Daukaus, but a step back. I think he gets his bearings, has a bounce-back performance here. I'm actually taking Kevin Holland via submission.
Interesting. I've got Kevin Holland via first-round knockout. That's right. First-round knockout.
KO. He needs to bounce back for sure.
Kevin Holland via first-round knockout, baby.
Too bad luck.
All right, moving on. Now. Main event. Diego Mareta Santos versus Johnny Walker. 5-round main event. Let me go first here because you've been making all the picks here. I'm sick of following you here. All right. To me, this is a really this jumps out as a really hard fight to call. I think they both want it. I think they both need it. And at the end of the day, I've just got this weird feeling that Johnny Walker is going to find a way to get through and get a stoppage late in the 4th round against Santos. I think he needs the win more. He's a little younger. He's a little hungrier, and he's going to dig a little deeper. But this is going to be a blood and guts war. I got Walker.
I hate agreeing with you, but I'm taking Johnny Walker too. I just think it's more about the age and athleticism. Yep. I think that Santos has aged in the last few years. He obviously dealt with the knee issues. Not quite as mobile as maybe he once was. Now that he's heavier with the bad knees, I think Johnny Walker's uber athletic will present some problems and knock him out.
Absolutely. And, okay, so with that, we're going to quickly move on to Bellator London MVP versus Lima 2. Who you got on that one, Fight Geek?
Yeah, what a fight. I mean, what a time to have the rematch. Douglas Lima's trending down. Michael Venom Page is trending up. So it gives us a lot more to think about than previously.
Yep. I'll go ahead. I've got MVP via unanimous decision.
Really?
Yeah. I think he's improved enough and I think he's going to shock us.
I've got Douglas Lima
Woo!
via submission.
Woo! That would be
Douglas Lima
big.
is going to understand that he won't be able to stand like he did in the first fight where he actually lost some of the exchanges. I think he'll get to his grappling, a place that we saw guys like Daly hold Michael Page down, and I think Lima will be able to use some of his jiu-jitsu and secure a submission.
Suddenly, that's like the fight I'm most excited for this weekend.
Oh, man, that fight is badass, no doubt.
Yeah. Damn. Okay, all right. So is that it? I think now we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to be back with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 115, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section of all, and that is Listener Questions!
Alright, let's do it.
All right. So, listener questions, we got a bunch of great ones this weekend. So let me start off with my man, Zan Bando. That's at Zan Bando 99. Friend of the show, one of our most loyal listeners. Shout out, Zan. He says, why do you think that Aljo hasn't been stripped of the belt yet? Also, what's next for Brian Ortega? Is a Volk rematch in play if both men, Volk and Ortega, win their next fights? Hashtag AskSplitPod. So first off, start off with the first question, Fight Geek. Do you think Aljo should have been stripped of the belt already? Why do you think he hasn't been stripped?
I mean, I think we've seen Dana's pretty patient with stripping of the belts. It hasn't been over a year, so...
It has not. It has not been over a year, and that's what a lot of people are saying.
So generally, I like to gauge it by a year of inactivity is kind of where you should be stripped. But we've seen Dana, extend that to almost 18 months for guys like Khabib, haven't we?
Yeah, so I generally agree. I'm taking a really hard stance with Aljo because I think that there's really extraordinary circumstances. I would have stripped him, honestly, but I know that that's not popular.
Right. But who's his agent?
Is it Ali?
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine if it is Ali, that would give him a little more leeway than others. But yeah. I think it is, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Aljo, I'll just say real quick, because I honestly, look, I know he gets a lot of hate, and I don't think this getting out of 267 helped. He was kind of hinting the whole time he was going to pull out. That's why it rubbed me the wrong way, at least. But I will say this. He offers a fascinating sort of sliding doors kind of symbolic mirroring with Anthony Lionheart Smith. It shows you what could have been for Smith. And if I'm being honest, Fight Geek, this might sound really harsh, but it almost seems like Smith made the right choice, that he wasn't willing to sell his dignity and respect for the belt. And did Aljo lose a lot of dignity and respect with winning the belt, and now what's happening afterwards? And I would argue yes.
Well, I think in a vacuum, yes, but in 10 years, he'll just be a champion on Wikipedia that nobody will really care about. So, I mean, I think, yeah, obviously the court of public opinion has swayed on him a bit based on, obviously.
A bit. You can't find an Aljo fan. It's difficult to find Aljo fans.
So, yeah, I think his popularity might have taken a turn, but I don't think that affects him, knowing that he's going to get paid as a champion in his next fight, and he's got that belt in his house.
Yeah, very fair, very fair.
I guarantee you all his friends call him champ.
If that
if that floats your boat.
I was going to say that would be a little weird to me, but I guess I don't know, and I'm not a professional fighter, so maybe I really shouldn't be speaking about that.
But I mean, as far as I mean, the main part is that he gets to be the champion when he comes back and get paid like one. So I think that's the big benefit and the reason to not really feel bad about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I think absolutely. Okay, so are we ready for the next listener question?
Let's go.
Okay, so this one comes from our man, Jalen Ware. That's at strive to be underscore GR8. Strive to be great. Jalen is a Split Podcast OG who always brings the fire. He says, where does Marlon Moraes go from here? Has all the skill set to be a top 2, but it seems like cardio and adapting mid-fight is his problem. What can he / should he do to fix it? Hashtag AskSplitPod.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on this. I think
we did.
I think, a little bit lesser competition potentially. The guy's 33 years old, so he still has a little bit of time to fight at the top level, but I don't know that.
But you made an interesting comment earlier. Remember when you said once you saw that Merab survived, you knew that Marlon would lose?
100%.
That's bad, right?
Yeah, I knew that after he shot his first load, there would be absolutely nothing left to defend himself with.
Yeah. And then he was finished in the second.
And then, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but when he's on the bottom taking damage, do we see him implement any level of that?
Not really. But it's, again, it's difficult when you're totally exhausted.
He's a fast twitch striker who, is good for 3 minutes. I just think that, to be honest, I think PFL would be his best opportunity to go make noise.
Yeah. I agree. I think that or Bellator, he could have some fun. But, I think
Bellator, he's going to have to fight some tough guys who can still...
At bantamweight? Who's he got to worry about at bantamweight? Sergio Pettis?
You like him over Sergio Pettis?
Not really, but that's the champ. I'm saying he'll be just fine getting there.
Well, even a guy like Rufian Stotts, who showed us wrestling and cardio, I mean, that's even a tough fight for Marlon Moraes at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you.
No, I'm just saying I don't know where you go from here as a guy who's challenged for a title. He's arguably lost his last 5 fights. His performances have fallen off a cliff. Like you said, he's expensive. So I think, he's going to have one at 33 years old. He's going to be looking to make a splash financially. And the UFC is obviously not going to make a splash losing 4 out of his last 5. So I'm sure someone like PFL, Bellator 1 will outbid what the UFC is going to offer him. And I think at this point, just like Eddie Alvarez or someone like that, it makes the most sense for him to follow the money. And there's no way it's going to be in the UFC losing 4 or 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this next question, love this one. This comes from my man, King Richard, another Split Pod OG. That's at @V_King Richard _V. Give him a follow, guys. He says, with the talks of Conor versus Volk, this is a simple 2-part question. 1, do you think if Conor could make it down to 145 that he could have a competitive fight with Volk? And second, if Conor could make it down to 145, do you think that's the best weight for him to make a true comeback?
A lot to unpack there. First of all, I want to say that I don't believe Conor McGregor can make 145.
I don't either.
He's added a lot of mass to his body.
Yep, he can't make it. He can't.
And even if he could make it, he wouldn't be the lightning fast, slender version he was when he was undefeated as the champion. He would be...
I know for a fact that 55 is a big cut for him. I know that for a fact.
It is a big cut for him. Well, he walks around and puts on muscle all the time. I mean, he wants to look like the biggest dude in the room. So, yeah, he's adding muscle, which is going to be harder to get down to 145. But my thing is the biggest problem with Conor is that he changed his style from when he was super elite. And I don't see him getting back to that style because he's a lot heavier, a lot more boxing heavy than he used to be.
A little bit more flat-footed.
And I actually think that the version of Conor today, if he made it to 145, would lose handily to Volkanovski.
Oh, absolutely. He couldn't handle that pace. No way.
Well, not only that, but Volkanovski has shown that he has true grit in very, very bad situations. And all Conor McGregor's ever shown that in bad situations that, he's done.
Yeah. Well, Diaz too fight a little, but yeah.
Diaz is not a known finisher, and Conor was running away for portions of that
That's
fight.
true. That's true. Okay, so do I think that it would be but you didn't answer if it would be competitive. So I guess we're kind of saying no.
I mean, would it be competitive? Yeah, all Conor fights
Well,
are competitive.
Would Conor win a round?
Conor could probably win the first round versus Volk until he figured him out and settled in. And then if clearly we saw this past weekend that Volk would have the deeper gas tank, the better defensive grappling, Conor would not be able to threaten him in any way there. So it would essentially be a striking match. We've seen Volkanovski over 10 rounds versus Max Holloway hold his own. So I think if he got through the first round with Conor McGregor, he would probably be in cruise control.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Although I do think, yeah.
Again, we're not talking about Conor McGregor 5 years ago at his absolute
No, I understand.
apex.
We're talking now.
We're talking about a 30-plus fighter coming off a pretty catastrophic leg injury, trying to reinvent himself versus an established elite champion.
Okay, but anyways, King Richard had a second question. If Conor could make it down to 145, is that the best weight for him to make a true comeback? Let me take this one first, since you took the first part first. I'm going to controversially, Fight Geek, say yes. That is Conor's best chance back. I think that the sport has evolved.
100%. That was Conor's best class, period.
I mean, it's too harsh to say that he starved himself to bully the weight class. I think that's too harsh. But yes, that would definitely be his best chance.
I mean, outside of Conor's featherweight.
Well, he did clown Alvarez, the lightweight champ.
No, I know. Let me finish. What I'm saying is, outside of Conor's featherweight run, he has 2 victories that matter in his career.
Yeah.
Alvarez and Diaz.
That's true.
He literally has 2 victories outside of his featherweight run in the UFC, which defined him. So yes, featherweight without a doubt is the best class. It always was for Conor. Conor, I always felt, would have been in a better position in his career today had he just stayed the featherweight champ and stacked, he would have been beloved like Max Holloway is beloved at featherweight, but maybe even more so.
Maybe more.
Maybe even more dominant. Conor McGregor, had he not got bored and looked for all the bigger stuff, might have been the featherweight champion reigning today, a la Anderson Silva at middleweight. So,
although for whatever reason he wanted to go up to 55 pretty quick. I mean, that was always on his mind. Of course,
he did. He went to 155 over in Cage Warriors, so that was always a thing for him. But what I'm saying is, in a perfect world, he would have been a featherweight the whole time because that was by far the best version of him.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I really do.
So if he could get back, I think that would be his best class because he gets back all of his advantages. The thing about Conor fighting at 155 and 170 is he's always going to be small. He's always going to give up advantages. And, Conor with advantages is a lot more dangerous than an undersized Conor.
Yep, absolutely agree. Okay, so next question comes from our main man, Juice, at Friendly Sparring Podcast. Give them a listen, guys. Great show. Good friend, Juice. He says, gentlemen, what's next for Roxy? #AskSplitPod. What is next for Roxy, Fight Geek?
What is next for Roxy? How about Montana De La Rosa?
Yep, I can see that. I could see a rematch with Macy Barber. I could see...
Macy Barber might want that rematch, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I like Macy, but that's far from a guaranteed win, Macy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Roxanne's aging, so, she's going to have a harder time as we go along. But, yeah, I think the Montana De La Rosa fight, 2 grapplers, 2 tough girls, I think that'd be a good one.
I agree. And, Juice is a big Roxy fan, and Roxy showed a lot of heart this weekend, so I think he can be very proud of that. Okay, so this next one comes from Louie, my man. That's at Maser Louie. That's at MASER Louie. He says, #AskSplitPod. What do you think about Lawler versus Jeff Neal? Obviously, Robbie's at the end of his career, but he looked renewed against Diaz and has a lot of momentum. Neal's a striker and ranked ahead of Robbie, but is on a 2-fight skid. I think it's a winnable fight for Robbie.
I'll go ahead and let you answer that. I don't necessarily. I think that Robbie looked good against Nick.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, very specific to Nick. I don't think that Robbie's going to go look that good against anyone else.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at the rankings. What do I think of Robbie versus Jeff Neal? So I don't hate that, Louis. I don't hate that fight. I think that's going to be a little bit tough for Robbie, if I'm being honest. I don't think that goes well.
Yeah,
for
Robbie needs to fight someone like Court McGee. He doesn't need to be fighting fast twitch in his prime ranked Jeff Neal. That makes no sense to me.
Well, you're being a little harsh. He did just get a big win over Nick Diaz, right?
Nick Diaz,
yeah,
25 pounds overweight, 6.5 years out, 38 years old.
Yeah,
I
true.
mean that win means absolutely nothing other. That win honestly means as much as Tito Ortiz's win over Chuck Liddell in their third fight. Same exact fight.
That's hyperbole. That's hyperbole. You're being overdramatic. You're being overdramatic like I always am.
No, I'm not being overdramatic. Robbie has 15 losses. This fight was completely irrelevant except for the fan appeal and Robbie Lawler, getting his win back. I mean, it was a more glorious version of Tito versus Chuck 3, but that's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so final answer, Louis, in my opinion, I would say Robbie shouldn't fight Jeff Neal. It sounds like you're a Robbie fan, so that's why I say avoid the Jeff Neal fight. I agree with Fight Geek.
Give Robbie Matt Brown again or something like that.
Yeah. I want him to have winnable fights against strikers.
Yeah, again, the reason Robbie looked good is because he was put in an advantageous situation to fight his fight.
Well, Nick did force a weight up against Robbie's will and still get beat. You got to give him credit.
I believe Robbie has more middleweight fights than Nick, so it would have been a more natural switch for him anyways.
Nick made the request.
No, I understand, but Robbie has a career at 185, and Nick doesn't.
He fought. So, what do you mean? He fought Anderson Silva for the middleweight belt.
He fought one time. Robbie Lawler actually fought in the middleweight division in Strikeforce and around, I think, in Pride, like multiple times. Like he was a middleweight for a portion of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So
Nick was a middleweight the last fight of his career in a celebrity fight. That's very different.
Okay, fair enough. So this question comes from our man, Zoe Yours Truly, at Zoe Yours Truly. That's at ZO Yours Truly. He says, hey guys, 2 questions. 1, was the Volk win better for Volk or Max, considering how both fights were decided? 2, Israel's moving to the States. Does this help or hurt him? 3, Phil, after Jon gets out of jail again, beats Francis and becomes champ, is he the GOAT? #AskSplitPod. I'll take that third question first that's directed at me. Look, if Jon, I'm putting it on record, okay? If Jon Jones... Hold on,
I'm looking at my phone. I think Jon just posted, actually, for the first time in the weight room, saying he's going to turn this nightmare into the best thing ever.
Okay, that's just sad at this point. If Jon Jones beats Francis Ngannou at heavyweight, he is the GOAT. I'm on record saying it, Zoe. So you've got me caught. So, Fight Geek, what do you think of his first question? Was the Volk win better for Volk or for Max? Well, I mean, I would think it's better for Volk, right? I mean, it's
100% better for Volk, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this weekend Volk did more for his. I think Volk did more for his credibility this weekend than he did in either of the Max fights.
I agree with that.
So this was the biggest weekend of Volk's career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And then his second question, Israel's moving to the States. Does this help or hurt him? I mean, I don't think it's going to help or hurt him because if he moves to the States, it's going to be with City Kickboxing and he's going to stay essentially in his gym.
I think it'll essentially help him because he'll have more access to more training partners, to more facilities.
He'll be able to go to the Performance Institute a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it will help them in the long run, but like you said, he'll still be City Kickboxing, but I think they'll have more resources here in the States.
Yeah, definitely with sparring partners, as I think you mentioned. Yeah, so definitely. Absolutely.
And wasn't there another question in there? Or we get all 3 of them.
It was the last one was directed to me. Is Jones the GOAT if he beats Ngannou after jail? And I said yes.
Fair enough.
And then, okay, this question comes from a Split Pod OG, Pat Tobin. What's up, Pat? At Pat_Tobin. Oh, we've gotten a few of these. So, where to next for Marlon Moraes? He's lost by TKO in 4 of his last 5. His only win in the last 2 years was a questionable decision over Aldo. Is he still in the late bantamweight or a gatekeeper at #AskSplitPod? We've kind of answered this. I don't even think he's a gatekeeper. I think it's like worse, right? He's in deep
Yeah,
trouble.
I mean, he's been exposed, I feel like. So I think, like I said, I feel like he's perfect for PFL. I think he would go there, have a chance to win $1 million versus competition that wouldn't push him as much, although like a Lance Palmer fight would be a nightmare for him if that ever happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, the UFC, just like Yoel Romero, who had multiple title opportunities and kind of fizzed out, and they couldn't quite use him anymore. I think it's a similar case with Moraes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the only other Twitter question is from Lease for Love, but there was no question. They just posted an article of Jones getting arrested for beating up his fiance, which we addressed, so no need to...
Awesome. So I've got one from Paulo Kelly.
Paulo Kelly!
Question. Here he goes.
Yo, guys, finally we're going to get a voice question from myself after the unfortunate attempt a few weeks back. The question is going to go as follows. Now that Valentina has in effect cleared out the flyweight division and Amanda has pretty much destroyed the bantamweight division, is the only fight that makes sense Shevchenko versus Nunes 3? I personally think so. After Nunes' next fight at featherweight, there's no excuse not to make it. What's your thoughts, guys? And thanks so much for so many great podcasts. See you again soon. Bye.
Oh, we love you. Paul's the man. I love
Good
Paul.
question. So yeah, we've touched on it a couple times. I've mentioned names like Talia Santos and Aspen Ladd. I think those are honestly the only two names that are floating around there that could keep that fight from happening.
So at the most, it's like each of the, like, maybe Nunes has 2 more fights, Valentina has 1 more fight. And
that fight will happen guaranteed in the next 18 months.
Yeah, it does seem like they're on an inevitable collision course.
I could see them both making 1 more defense and then maybe mid-summertime next year fighting.
And then it would be at what? I just assume bantamweight?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, Nunes
Can Nunes make 125? No,
she can't, and no, that wouldn't.
Yeah, she can't. No, there's no way she can make it.
She's the one who's up 2-0 in the series, so she would never give that up.
I mean, right. The insinuation being she could go for 3 belts, but she can't make 25. I know that 35 is a hard cut for her.
Yeah, she's more comfortable at
45.
Exactly.
She's way more comfortable at 45.
So yeah, I think that does it, huh?
Yep, it does. Guys, so thank you so much. Really quick before I hand it off to Fight Geek, we are still continuing our little 2-month contest. If you go on to Apple iTunes Podcast and you write a 5-star review in the next few weeks, so starting now, you will be eligible to win a mysterious prize at the end of the 2 months. Who knows? It could be a beer koozie, a Phil the MMA dude that no one wanted 3 years ago. It could be something even better.
Hopefully it's something better.
Why'd you have to say that?
All right.
Okay, all right. So Fight Geek, take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA dude. We are at Split_podcast. It's 4 words. The Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.